And we're back with more News Talk Saga 960. So very glad you could join us on this edition of the Mark Petroni Show. And it is that time for UFO Friday. Yeah, it's Thursday, but of course we do this a day before. And there's a lot in the news now. So lots to talk about with our friend Dave Scott of Spaced Out Radio. And by the way, you can catch Dave's terrific show on Saga 960 AM. Or if you're not in the GTA, saga960am.ca, because of course Dave is based in British Columbia in beautiful 100-mile house. And it's all the talk about UFOs. I had a friend ask me, so what's the government doing now, releasing all these documents? It's a heck of a time to do that with the war in Ukraine, of course, going on, inflation. You've got a surge of people at the border in Mexico trying to break through and heading for the border into the United States, all sorts of economic problems. And now all of a sudden the government wants to release these documents. Is it a distraction or what? Is that why it's going on right now? Nevertheless, it is interesting. We're seeing a lot of talk that some of these UFO sightings have actually led to physical manifestations. Now, you'll know, Dave, that this is nothing new, going all the way back to Falcon Lake in Manitoba, where a Canadian experienced burns, right? Radiation burns, when he allegedly, according to his own testimony, made contact with a craft of some kind. And so now we're hearing that this is still going on, that people are experiencing injuries in many cases related to this. So what's your take on the latest document dump, courtesy of the Pentagon in the United States?
And that's a great question to start off with, Mark, because I really believe that this is one of the biggest stories that we have to look in. Look, just 4 years ago, the Pentagon was in complete denial of anything UFO happening in this world. And now we're getting into the effects of ET contact or UAP contact regarding everyday people. Look, experiencers around the world for decades have been saying the same thing: nightmares and of surgeries and all sorts of things happening from these extraterrestrials. People waking up with headaches or nosebleeds when they don't normally get them. People with loss of memory, loss of time, little scoop marks on their bodies, little red dots on their bodies. I mean, we are seeing a lot of very interesting news regarding this. I'm actually very surprised, Mark, when this article came out. I was literally fist pumping because, for weeks we've been talking about remember I told you and your audience about the three phases. First, it was about confirming that there were some things happening. Second phase was about confirming that it's not Russia, it's not China, it's not a foreign adversary. And then phase three, it was about getting into the people who are having some sort of extraterrestrial or ultra terrestrial type of contact. And this falls right into that category of everything that we have talked about leading up to this. I'm very excited about this article. I'm extremely surprised that this article in these paperwork coming out in the DIRD's paperwork has come out of the Pentagon about the results that people are having and claiming have happened to them. And I hope that it goes a little further, because this now opens up the idea that offices in the Pentagon have been studying extraterrestrial type contact, which they have completely 100% denied up until now.
Yeah, interesting. So, in a way, this admits that they haven't been altogether honest with us. So, who knows what else they're hiding? I just want to point you to this story in the Daily Mail UK edition, where the paper is based. UFOs sightings have left witnesses with radiation burns, brain damage, and perceived time suspension. Unfortunately, when you talk about brain damage, then it tends to cast aspersions on people who have experienced this stuff, because people are going to say, well, maybe this person had issues, mental issues, before they made this alleged contact. And interesting, again, perceived time suspension. Well, we've known about this sort of thing going on for decades now, and highlighted, if you go all the way back to Betty and Barney Hill and what they experienced. I guess they were the first one to talk about lost time, if I'm not wrong about that. And you would have far more expertise around their experience back in, I guess it was the early 60s that they had their experience. And so these newly released Pentagon documents, a report dating back to 2010, including the psychological effects. U.S. intelligence officials have evidence now that UFO sightings have led to adverse health effects. So is this going to prompt people to be more afraid? I mean, you'll remember, of course, if you go all the way back to the 40s and like 50s, after the discussions about flying saucers, there was a hysteria around this, wasn't there, Dave? And of course, what came out of that was all sorts of movies about UFOs and aliens and the rest of that, like the day the Earth stood still, and those classics. Is it possible that we're going to be entering, say, a new age, a new wave of hysteria around UFOs as a result of this report, do you think?
Well, it all depends how far the media wants to take this, Mark, because I don't know how this got out. I don't know if it was supposed to come out, if it got slipped through. I mean, something this top secret, I think, would have got some sort of permission from the higher ups to be released. Look, when you're talking about people who have had cancer or broken bones or emphysema being healed by extraterrestrials, we have only heard this anecdotally up through the years. Okay. And to many of us, even within the UFO community, this has sounded like dream type of garbage that somebody would make up in their head. Oh, I had arthritis in my knees and now my knees are healed. I know someone who claims that they had their arm broken and put back together properly by extraterrestrials.
Wait a minute. So this account that you heard, just to back up a little bit,
Yeah.
this account that you heard was somebody that had their arm broken before the encounter and the aliens fixed it, supposedly?
Yes. Right. And I mean,
Wow.
I've heard people who claim that they had cancer and had an experience.
And had their cancer
Here's one that
cured.
I know. Here's one that I know of that I could share because it's been shared on my show.
Okay.
Dr. Bob McGuire, I believe you've heard me mention his name before. He's former CIA, former National Reconnaissance Organization, NRO, one of the former heads of science and mathematics at Virginia Tech University up until a couple of years ago. Pretty smart guy. He's got his name on over 20 satellites that we know of in space right now. I mean, you got to be pretty brilliant to have that. His beautiful wife, Sharon, a couple of years ago, had a stroke. He went and visited a gentleman named Chris Bledsoe, who has had ET contact about the last 10, 11 years and has been studied by numerous agencies, scientists, professors at universities. Even his reports have gone back to the Pope himself at the Vatican. And this guy claims to have had healing powers. Well, Bob's wife, Sharon, had a stroke a few years ago that incapacitated her pretty well. She had a limp. She was partially paralyzed. And when they got back home to Alabama, it started raining in their house.
Raining in their house.
Raining in their house. And they started seeing orbs and everything in their house. And when he contacted Chris Bledsoe after this had happened, Sharon went from about a 60% human being back up to about a 95% human being with barely any type of effects from her stroke that she suffered previously. She was walking on a cane, does not need a cane anymore.
Is this rare, or is this something that you've heard numerous accounts of?
Pardon me?
Is this rare, or is this something that you have heard repeatedly where alien contact? I mean, here we have reports, Dave, and you've seen them, where people have
Mhm.
suffered the ill effects of sightings, brain damage, radiation burns. What you're saying is there are numerous accounts where, in fact, the opposite seems to have happened, where people who had physical ailments actually had those issues, those physical issues, cured as a result of that contact.
Yes. Samantha Mowat is another one where, as an infant, she was apparently born with asthma or something along those lines. And because she came from a house where there was heavy smokers when she was born. And apparently she was having troubles breathing. And extraterrestrials came in and protected her lungs, did something to her lungs, and she was able to breathe properly as an infant after that contact.
That's amazing. That's
So
astonishing. And but it,
look,
you know,
you
okay,
brought
go
up
ahead.
Stefan Mikulik. You brought up Stefan Mikulik from the Falcon Lake incident. I mean, there's
Yes,
a case, gentleman, who is still alive today. This incident happened in 1967, where he suffered burn marks. Like it
yes,
looked like almost like a bingo card on his chest of dots in a pattern. And
yes.
anybody can go on to Google to look at the photographs of Mr. Mikulik lying in his bed going through this. And those marks, after months, would disappear. They would go away, and then they would come back. And doctors believe they were some sort of radiation mark from the craft that he saw. And so we have all of these different instances with missing time, body functions, healing, and everything. And like I said, I don't know why the Pentagon released this, but I am completely fascinated that they've gone a little bit woo, as we say in my business, and have opened up the doors to many things happening. There's the patterns right there for your YouTube audience. But I mean, this is absolutely incredible, my friend. Mark, I don't know how this got through and how this made public.
Yeah. And according to this story, Falcon Lake incident is Canada's best documented UFO case, even 50 years later. And the reason is, Dave, as you well know, is that Stefan Michalak suffered physical injuries, I guess, that we can still see pictures of today. And he can still talk about that. His story hasn't changed, where he came across something metallic near his residence in Manitoba in the Falcon Lake woods in May, the May long weekend of 1967. And it was something that put his family life into upheaval and remains one of the world's best known encounters. And there you go. I mean, I guess once again, he's never deviated from that story, has he?
You know what's very interesting about the dates of that?
No, what?
You know who Canada's Minister of Defense was when that happened?
Of
The late
course.
Hellier.
Yes, Hellier. He was, and he, of course, is one of really the only defense minister that I know of that actually came out and said, yeah, we've been visited. There's been contact for eons. Aliens are real. And so this guy went all out, but it kind of
Yes.
destroyed his career, his political career after that. It happened at a time when people just had no patience for it whatsoever. Can you stick around for one more segment? We
I would love.
always need a second one with you. Dave Scott joining us on Saga 960. You can check out Dave's incredible show, Spaced Out Radio, right on Saga 960, Mondays through Fridays from 10 p.m. Eastern Time to 1 a.m. 3 hours of spine tingling radio that will keep you up at night listening, in rapt attention over his stories and accounts and incredible interviews. And one of the people that you've had on your show, of course, is Luis Elizondo. Luis Elizondo, of course. Now, he has been on Fox News quite often lately talking to Tucker Carlson. And he was on again last night talking a little about these Pentagon documents, this dump of documents that people are now buzzing about. And he had some thoughts about this. And why don't we listen a little bit to what he told Tucker Carlson yesterday, shall we? Let's listen.
So for close to 80 years, people who ask questions about UFOs are written off as deranged conspiracy mongers. Oh, shut up about UFOs. Then we learned about something called the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program. It was an operation at the Pentagon, cloaked from public scrutiny, that studied UFO sightings for a very long time, and it was completely real because those sightings are real. The Defense Intelligence Agency has just released that program's 2010 report on UFOs. And among other things, the document tells us that the government can prove that UFO sightings have caused radiation burns, paralysis, and brain damage. The report also says that some people who saw UFOs experienced, quote, perceived time suspension. They also saw ghosts and other spirits.
Ghosts.
In all, that report lists 42 cases of adverse effects from medical files and another 300 adverse effects from unpublished cases, whatever that means. Lou Elizondo knows what it means because he used to run the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program. We're happy to have him on tonight. Lou, thanks so much for coming on. So, I mean, this was a feature of people's firsthand accounts going back 50 years to the 60s. You know, I saw this thing and I had these physical effects. I guess that turns out to be real. Tell us about these effects.
Yeah, Tucker, actually, it's even more than that. This is not, the notion of where, let's say, grandma saw some lights in the backyard. These are military eyewitnesses. In some cases, they're fighter pilots or they're security personnel that have come up close and personal with a UAP, or I guess in the vernacular, UFO. And in some cases, they have sustained significant, some sort of medical trauma, something that can be looked at and quantified and qualified and measured as some sort of biological effect, that they didn't suffer these consequences until they came up close and personal to a UFO. And by the way, let me just say, this isn't pseudoscience. For you're absolutely right in your intro. For many years, we've been told, oh, this is silly and whatnot, and this topic is really not to be taken seriously. Look, I was part of the program. I ran the program for a better part of 8 years on this topic. It is absolutely real. And now finally, because of the pressure put by Congress and people like you in the media, finally our government is beginning to become more transparent about this topic and tell the truth about this topic in a way that I wasn't at liberty to have the conversation 4 years ago when you and I first started talking with each other.
Yeah. So I'm getting the idea that when they don't want to hear what you have to say, they call you a conspiracy monger. So these physical effects, some of which are serious, does the Pentagon believe these were intentionally inflicted on people, or they were just byproducts of the experience?
Tucker, that's a fantastic question. Look, the bottom line is, if I've never seen a microwave oven before, and let's say I didn't know how to use it, and I happen to put my hand or unfortunately, let's say my head too close to a microwave oven when it's being turned on, chances are there's going to be some sort of negative biological consequence. Same holds true if I go to let's say an average airport. I just took a 737 today, and if I'm in the cockpit or I'm in the aircraft, there's no real threat. But if I stand behind the engine when the engine is firing up, chances are I'm going to get burned. I'm going to lose my hearing. There are medical consequences. The question is it deliberate? Is it a product of the technology? Yes. Or is it a product of something else? And we think right now, and again, let me just preface, preliminarily speaking, it's probably just a consequence of the advanced technology.
Okay. So there you go. It's I guess he's calling it collateral damage, Dave.
Yes.
So this just happened because somebody was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Absolutely. I think this also paints a picture, Mark, that not all extraterrestrials are evil, and that they're not here to be like Independence Day and blow up buildings and shatter mankind, into some sort of pixie dust that, we see coming out of Hollywood all the time. Look, if you saw me smiling and nodding my head with what Luis Elizondo was saying, I will tell you this. The phenomena is what we need to start calling this. It's not UFOs anymore. It's not cryptids. It's not ghosts. The entire phenomena, Mark, is linked together. And this is the new world of study that is coming out into the public, whether those in my field like it or not. Now, I have talked recently with one of Luis Elizondo's best friends, and cohorts, a guy named Sean Cahill, and we had a very, very interesting topic of conversation a few weeks ago where we were talking about the phenomena. What if the phenomena is everything? It's you, it's me, it's every tree on this planet, every drop of water, every dog, every cat, and we just don't know how the phenomena is all interconnected. Because the one thing that the most mature researchers are looking at here, and I can name a number of them, from Canadian Grant Cameron to a gentleman named David Weatherly, Timothy Renner, Joshua Cutchin, and many others, is that they believe there is this invisible thread that sews every part of the phenomena together. And we have to start looking at it that way. Look, there are many times, Mark, where I have heard reports where people have been out camping and they could feel and hear these Sasquatch around them. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they hear the Sasquatch start screaming and yelling and running off. And they're like, what the heck is going on? And then they look above them and there's a UFO. Or people such as myself who've had multiple experiences with the phenomena, who are sitting there wondering, how is this all tied together? Because I just saw a ghost in my house, and 2 nights later, I go outside and there's a black triangle hovering over my house. It is all tied together. And I like to put it this way. I like to use a little bit of humor with it. It's almost like, Mark, those who are open to the experience and have the multiple experience all of a sudden become like the old Kmart blue light special. Remember those days when Kmart was around and all of a sudden you'd hear the announcer of the building, find the blue light because Puritan Chunky Soup is now on for just 59 cents a can.
Blue light special.
Yeah, the blue light special. And it's almost like this blue light special shoots billions of miles into the atmosphere and into the stratosphere and tells everything that is weird and odd, saying, hey, that Dave guy, yeah, he's got the woo, man. He's got the woo. And go check him on out. It's almost like you become a magnet towards this. That is why so many people who've had experiences with UFOs will claim to have had paranormal experiences in their house that have never happened before, or go into the forest and all of a sudden see little gnomes running around, or Bigfoot.
I guess if you welcome that sort of thing, then it's going to happen. Is that how it works? I mean, in your view, is it something that you have to sort of almost be open to and say, okay, well, I'm going to allow the stuff to permeate my consciousness. And if there's something out there, bring it. I'm ready for you. Is that the type of energy that you got to put out there in
Absolutely.
order to allow, if you want to say, these other beings to maybe contact you?
Yes. Mark, we have a study.
Is that what
Yeah,
you did?
that's exactly what I
said. Okay, if you're out there, bring it. I'm ready for you. I'm open to it.
It's a lot of meditation. It's a lot of consciousness and concentration. It's about, a lot of people in spirituality, and this is where we get into the woo a little bit, where a lot of people believe it's all peace, love, and light, man. I mean, go retro hippie if you want, but a lot of people believe that's what it's all about. And there are a number of people who believe that they are having their own enlightenments by using psychedelics like ayahuasca or mushrooms, and they are becoming very popular and prevalent within the consciousness community for communication. Now, have I tried that? No, for the record, I have not. I don't want to try that because honestly, it scares me. Okay. I've had enough contact without it that I don't think I need any sort of, woo steroids in order to try and bring it together, but the idea behind it all, Mark, is that it is all intertwined. And this is a consciousness. This is a phenomena. And people better get used to the word phenomena because that's where we're going. And Mark, we've been doing this 2 years now. Hard to believe. We've been doing this 2 years already.
It's been fun. Yeah.
And I've been enjoying it ever since. And thank you for reaching out for me. But if you go back to the first shows when we started doing this, I had mentioned that it seems to be all linked together.
Yes.
And now we have the United States Pentagon coming out saying, guess what, people? It's all linked together. And we don't know what that is. And now that's how we got to start concentrating on the phenomena.
What I'm happy about is these documents and the media reports that have come out of it suggest that it's largely negative, at least if you believe these stories, that you're going to get burned, you're going to get brain damage, you're going to suffer the ill effects. What you're saying is, oh, by the way, there are numerous accounts of people actually benefiting from these events. And so, but unfortunately, we have a lot of stories, movies, for instance. We've seen the stories, right? Fire in the sky, people who have been subjected to probes and prods and had stuff.
But that sells.
Stuck in them.
But that sells. Mark, here's the thing that we don't know. We don't know the adverse effects of what it's like to be taken on craft. Okay. I have no problem going on record stating that I have been abducted before. I woke up on the table when they were cutting open the back of my head. Okay. I know what it's like to have that happen. Now, a lot of people will say, well, hey, what how do you know it wasn't a dream or whatever? Well, I have a pulsating head that followed me back then, and I sure as hell wasn't drinking the night before. Okay. And my hangover. Was there
any physical marks? Was there any scarring or anything like that?
No, they're very clean at what they do. But here's what I'm getting at, Mark. All right. When I say this, when you are taken, we don't know what they do to us, and they flush our memories because maybe we cannot handle the process. So there's two ways people believe we are being taken. Number one, we're taken spiritually, where they take our soul, our consciousness, or whatever. And the other way is to be taken physically, where they take your entire body. Look, how do you have abductees who live on the 57th floor of a Manhattan condo right in downtown Manhattan, and they're put back together? No problem. But they're wearing someone else's pajamas that they've never had before. It happens. And there's a lot of cases about that happening. So,
and I guess then you have the hypnosis, I suppose, as part of it too, right?
Exactly. So that's where the missing time comes in, because we don't know. Maybe they knock us out and do not give us the memory of it, because it is actually quite traumatic on the human anatomy, and therefore they need to not allow us to have recall on it for our own safety measures. There's always a yin to a yang. You know what I'm saying? And maybe that's the reason why. I'm not making excuses. I'm being hypothetical. I really don't know the entire answer to that. But what I do know is that there are a lot of people who claim positives. I've had a positive experience. I've had weird experiences, and I've had very negative experiences. Same as Samantha Mowat, same as Melinda Leslie, Chris Bledsoe, and many other experiencers that are out there. I've had times where my friend in Illinois, Nicole Sakic, and I have had the exact same dream the exact same night, and were downloaded with the exact same figure. And when we drew it out the night, or when we were talking about it and we drew it out, imagine our surprise when we draw the exact same object that we saw. I mean, this is what they are doing, and why they are doing it, I don't know, Mark. The idea behind it is maybe to open up the consciousness and the minds of people who are willing to believe that the phenomena is real and all around us.
And the crop circles, that would be all part of it.
Oh, somebody needs navigational charts.
Wow, fascinating stuff. Dave, thank you so much for coming on the show. Tell us a little bit about some of the guests that maybe you've got. Is Luis Elizondo going to be on your show again? Because that's always fun.
April 29th on Saga 960. Luis Elizondo will be live with us, and I'm looking forward to it. And this is a topic that I am getting into. In fact, as soon as I get off the phone here, I'm going to call one of my contacts that's very close to Lou, and I'm going to say to him point blank, hey, bud, was this supposed to come out? Was this supposed to be leaked? Because I need to know. I need to know. And I'm very interested and thrilled about learning about it. But it is an absolute pleasure to always share the woo with your audience on Saga 960, Mark. And I know that they're tuning in. Who is this crazy dude from British Columbia who's talking all this alien stuff? Well, come on out and check us on out, 10 p.m.
Absolutely. Well, by now, listeners to this show know that you come on most Fridays to talk about this stuff. It's absolutely fascinating. And it's nice to see it advance. For the longest time, it seemed like nothing new was coming out, and all you ever had was the government denying it.
Yes.
And now all of a sudden, you've got some more videos coming out. I have no doubt that the government is hiding some videos. And now we've got documents suggesting that people are manifesting all sorts of physical, manifestations, one way or another, as a result of their sightings. So interesting stuff, fascinating stuff. Check out Dave Scott, Spaced Out Radio on Saga 960 AM. And if you're not in the GTA, well, you can get it online at saga960am.ca. And that is from 10 p.m. Eastern Time to 1 a.m. Eastern Time. Thank you, Dave. Have a great weekend. And that's it for me on this edition of the Mark Petronis Show. And I hope you enjoyed it. Always a blast having you on, listening. And let's do it again next week. Have a great weekend. Have a safe weekend. Be safe. Be strong. We'll do it again soon. Bye-bye for now.